So we're going to be hitting pretty heavy on the 2025 class today.
Yeah.
And there's some good things and some not so good things. There's a couple positions where if you need that on your team, much like in the NFL, you might be better off buying a veteran. Now, let's kick it off. Let's start with the position that seems to get a lot of flack in the fantasy community. Because people don't want to talk about it. But let's start with the quarterback position. All right. So we're talking about, what you can avoid and what you should do. So Nate, why don't you kick it off for us here and tell me what you think about this quarterback class, and then I'll piggyback off that.
All right. Well, this quarterback class, I don't feel like there's any blue chip prospect. And what I mean by that is, that I don't want to use the word generational because we save that for the special players.
Yeah.
But blue chip is that player that an NFL team looks at and they know that they can build around this player. Blue chip players expected to be a Pro Bowler, possibly an All Pro. Someone that is a safe pick, but a very high ceiling pick as well. And blue chip prospects don't always work out. Jadeveon Clowney coming out of South Carolina was considered a blue chip prospect, and he had his ups and downs when he was with the Texans and then everywhere he's been since then. So I don't feel like there's any blue chip prospects. We're looking at Cam Ward. We're looking at Shedeur Sanders, some other guys out there like Jackson Dart, Will Howard for Ohio State, Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe. All these quarterbacks, they all have question marks. They all have upside, but none of them are that blue chip prospect. In fact, whatever your quarterback one is in this class, whether it's Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, those are the most two common QB1s among analysts so far. None of them would have been a top quarterback in last year's draft. At best, I think they would have been quarterback 4 or quarterback 5 in last year's quarterback class. Now, albeit last year's quarterback class so far has been an incredible quarterback class. We've seen a lot of success very quickly from a lot of those quarterbacks. So it's a high bar, let's be honest, but still, looking at the quarterbacks that we've just witnessed in the rookie year, Sanders, Cam Ward, quarterback 4, quarterback 5 at best. So that overall talent in the quarterback class at the top is much lower than it was last year. We have to take that into account because every year, it's very easy for us to put the quarterback 1 at the 101 in Superflex. But this year, I don't know if the 101 is going to be a quarterback.
I agree.
Now, in Superflex leagues, there's always going to be quarterbacks going 101, maybe not in your league, but certainly in someone else's league. But we have Ashton Genty, who is considered, almost a generational running back prospect. We'll see how the rest of the offseason goes in the draft process to see if he actually gets labeled a generational prospect or not. But there's going to be a lot of competition outside of just the quarterbacks for those top draft spots in these rookie drafts. And that's something we just have to take into account when looking at this quarterback class. Just because someone's the quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 does not mean they're going to have the same successes as last year's quarterback 1 and quarterback 2. We have to compare against classes, and that really helps us get a good scope of what this quarterback class is going to look like. And I'm not sure that you're going to be able to find your next cornerstone quarterback in this class.
It's possible. It's always possible. But I think what we're trying to get at here is this might be the weakest part of this class, I feel. And there are teams out there that need quarterbacks too. The New York Giants, the New York Jets, look at that. MetLife Stadium's got a quarterback deficiency going on over there. The Raiders, I don't know what the Saints are going to do. There's going to always be those other teams that kind of pop in and surprise you with, they drafted, like when the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall. So, there's going to be vacancies, but there's also a possibility that you could see some guys getting starting opportunities because they don't like this draft class. You could see a guy like maybe Sam Darnold moves on, goes somewhere else. The Vikings hand it over to JJ McCarthy, obviously depending on what they do in the playoffs this year. Although if they play like they did against the Lions, it's not going to be looking good. Also, Nate, how wild is it that a 14-win team is playing as the road team in a wild card game? It is just bananas to me.
That's kind of crazy, but it's not as crazy as the college football playoffs. But that was for last week's Patreon where I kind of ranted about that.
For sure. You could have guys like Kenny Pickett played well in relief of Jalen Hurts. Maybe he gets traded. He gets another starting opportunity as kind of bridging the gap.
There's always bridge quarterbacks. Remember a couple of years ago, Tyrod Taylor was a very startable quarterback for the Buffalo Bills.
He was, yeah. And look, the 26 class is going to be looking good. You got guys like Drew Aller is going to be coming out. There's some other good players too. Although Drew Aller's still undecided what's going to happen. We'll see how the playoffs go. But Nate, you have a couple quarterbacks here. You're saying maybe trade for some quarterbacks that aren't old, but the new has worn off. Give me a few examples here. I think I might have a few of the same guys, or maybe one of them.
Yeah. I think that, there's always a special shine that comes with rookies, sophomores, even third-year players, where, especially in the Dynasty community, obviously in the NFL fandom as a whole, but especially in the Dynasty community, we're always looking for the next best thing. We're always trying to get in before it's too late, before it gets expensive. But a lot of times with how it's looked over the past year or two, with how quickly rookies have been successful, sometimes the most expensive time is after the rookie year, during their sophomore year, midway through the rookie year, because everyone is demanding those players so much that these other players that the shine is kind of worn off, yet they're still productive, they become the valuable players. And when I'm looking at this quarterback class and I'm seeing, early mock draft showing Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward at the 102, 103, but then I'm also seeing some of these quarterbacks that I think are better than those rookies being traded for the 107, the 110. That's where that balance of value has not really found itself. And that's where we can kind of take advantage, especially early on in the draft process, while there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of analysis that hasn't happened yet, and a lot of testing that hasn't happened yet, a lot of rumors, because we know that in the draft process, rumors and intel from the NFL community, NFL scouts, GMs, things like that, that plays a huge part. And not just how we value these rookies before the draft, but also how the draft actually happens, because all these GMs are trying to get information from each other and trying to play head games with each other. So taking that imbalance of value at the quarterback position can be really beneficial. And some players I wanted to highlight tonight that I think currently have that little bit of imbalance, whether it's because they had down years or because they just, are a little bit older than some of these young guys. One I definitely want to point out is Trevor Lawrence. And I know I mentioned Trevor Lawrence quite a bit. I guess I'm standing for Trevor Lawrence, as the kids would say, Mike. But I do think he's still a value. Quarterback 7 this year, only played in 10 games. Quarterback 27, only played in 10 games. Quarterback 13 last year, and in 2022, he was the quarterback 8. So in the last 2 full seasons he played, he was quarterback 13, quarterback 8. That is a very valuable quarterback, especially in a super flex league where you're starting 2 quarterbacks. And now moving into next year, he's throwing to perhaps the best rookie wide receiver we saw this year in Brian Thomas Jr. And also Christian Kirk will be coming back, who is around the talent level of Darnell Mooney, and also a healthy Evan Ingram. So
isn't Darnell Mooney around the talent level of Christian Kirk? It doesn't matter. However you want.
Hey, we'll see how it works out next year.
You just keep eating that crow over and over again, don't you?
I am nothing but honest around here.
Yes, that is true.
So some trades I found for Trevor Lawrence that I want to throw out here. One trade, CJ Stroud and Xavier Worthy for Trevor Lawrence and JSN. And I will say, I think this is a pretty fair trade, but Mike, what do you think's going on here?
I think that right now, with the way things are looking, it might be a slight downgrade at the quarterback position, but it's a massive upgrade at the wide receiver position. So I would consider this trade a win for both sides, and I like it.
Yeah. And hey, last year around May, I believe CJ Stroud was the quarterback 1 on Keep Trade Cut. And
who is it right now? Do you know?
Yeah. The quarterback 1, I believe, is Josh Allen, though it really should be Lamar Jackson. If we're being honest.
He's standing again, everybody.
I think the majority of NFL fans should agree with me, and I'm hoping that the NFL MVP voters agree with me as well. I'm ready for that MV3, but more importantly, just a side note here, who cares about the MVP? Lamar Jackson needs the Super Bowl.
It is Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson is quarterback 2. Jaden Daniels, quarterback 3.
As I said, these young players, the demand is there. And oftentimes the most expensive time to buy these guys is at the end of the rookie season.
Yeah.
That's where it was with CJ Stroud. Jaden Daniels now quarterback 3. I believe in Jaden Daniels, but he's going to have to continue to hit top marks year after year to stay at quarterback 3. So that's where the value comes in to go after a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who is currently down right now. Mike, where's Trevor Lawrence on Keep Trade Cut? I believe last time I looked, he was like QB 18 or something like that, QB 15 maybe. On Keep Trade Cut.
He is quarterback 18.
Yep.
He's behind Jared Goff and one spot ahead of JJ McCarthy.
One spot ahead of a rookie who hasn't even played yet.
Yeah, which I think is crazy. Like, I can understand it maybe if you feel long-term JJ McCarthy's one spot ahead of Bryce Young. They have him over Tua, Anthony Richardson, Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, guys that played at a high level this season and definitely helped your team win some games. You know, you weren't expecting Russell Wilson maybe to do much with the Steelers, but he came in and played pretty well. But who else you got for us
Yeah,
here?
well, one other trade here because I was talking about our draft picks, the 110 for Trevor Lawrence.
Send it.
I think that is an incredible trade. I saw multiple 110s traded for Trevor Lawrence. You're not going to do any better this year at the 110 than getting Trevor Lawrence.
No.
And I think that as we get closer to the draft, it's going to be much harder to trade the 110 for Trevor Lawrence.
I agree.
All right. Next player I wanted to bring up, Baker Mayfield. Quarterback 4 this year, Mike.
Look at him go.
Quarterback 4 this year. And if you think it's just a one-hit wonder, he was quarterback 10 last year.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield has found himself with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has signed an extension there. He is confident, and a confident Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback in the NFL. And he averaged the same points per game this year as Joe Burrow, over 22 points per game.
Wow.
So Baker, and that's with Chris Godwin getting hurt after week 7, week 8. So Baker Mayfield has really come into his own and someone that I think we should be going after as well. I saw trades for Baker Mayfield, multiple trades with the 107 for Baker Mayfield. I think that's a great trade to make right now if you need a quarterback.
Send it.
Another trade I saw, Anthony Richardson in the 202.
Yes, full send.
Full send.
Yeah.
All right. Another player, Dak Prescott, gets a lot of hate because of the star on his helmet. He was quarterback 31 this year, only played 8 games. But last year in a full season, quarterback 3, Mike.
Yeah.
Quarterback 3.
He's a good quarterback, man.
He's a good fantasy quarterback. Maybe I wouldn't want him as my franchise quarterback if I'm trying to win the Super Bowl, but I'm not doing that in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I need someone that can give me 17 weeks of production.
As an Eagles fan, I love you taking shots at the Cowboys for me. I'll poo-poo on the Steelers later if you want.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, help me out. You already talked up Russell Wilson, so I didn't enjoy that. But the offense can't get worse next year in Dallas. I can't think that it can get any worse than, as much as I love Rico Dowdle, and he did rush for over 1,000 yards going into the season with Zeke and Rico as your starting running backs and not really knowing which one is, and then CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of has-beens or no names. It wasn't really great for the Cowboys offense. So they have to invest in that offense this year. I think Dak can get back to being a top 12 quarterback next year. And some moves for him. I saw the 110 for Dak Prescott in the 404.
Yeah.
Easy money.
Yeah.
Also saw Michael Penix in the 2nd-round pick for Dak Prescott in a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, look, Michael Penix has looked pretty good in his time. Not anything over impressive, but I think he was helped out with play calling and scheme. But if you're looking to win now, I think this is a good move to make.
And even if Michael Penix hits, which I think Michael Penix hitting is being somewhere around quarterback 12, because he doesn't have the legs to really get too much into like the top 5 quarterbacks, as long as the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFL are healthy. Yeah. Then you're just trying to get someone that's similar to Dak Prescott, who you already could get. So those trades there. And then one last guy, Mike, who I know you love, Jared Goff, always a value at the quarterback position.
I was harassed when I said to buy him after he went to the Lions, by the way.
It was an incredible time to buy him because he's been great since then. And some trades I saw for Jared Goff just recently going at such a value. Matthew Stafford and Isaiah Pacheco for Jared Goff. Also, Josh Jacobs straight up for Jared Goff.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So, Mike, there's some alternates if you're trying to get a quarterback in the 1st round, what to do with your 1st-round pick. But, Mike, you wanna let us know a quarterback to stay away from that you're not interested in at all.
Yeah, and that's Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. It's just so he had another year of eligibility, and you're like, oh, he was in school 5 years. His first year was in 2020. If you were in school in 2020, you automatically got an extra year of eligibility. In case you're wondering about how that works out, I think he should have came back and tried to develop more. Right now, he's only a projected 2nd-round NFL draft pick, and that's courtesy of NFLmockdraftdatabase.com. Are they the be-all, end-all? No. But right now, this is what we have to go on. Mm-hmm. I'm using what we have. Very erratic at time. He led the SEC in interceptions, by the way, Nate. The SEC, who no longer has any teams in the college football playoffs. Do with that what you will. Now, the one thing I will say is he has good size and build to be an NFL quarterback, but I feel like right now, unless I know what scheme he's going to, he's a low-ceiling player. safe floor, but probably not going to have like a Justin Herbert type ceiling, I feel, at this point. So there's a couple guys I want to talk about. Trevor Lawrence was one of them, but you covered him pretty well. So I'm just going to point out two others. Jordan Love is one of them, and Caleb Williams is another one. I just want to kind of do a little price check on Caleb Williams here. So Jordan Love, a couple trades here. Chris Olave and a 25 first for Jordan Love, and the ultimate throw-in, Quentin Johnston.
Oh, the ultimate throw-in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that move. I think Jordan Love, a very good quarterback. I think he had a little bit of a down year this year compared to expectations, but overall still a pretty decent year.
Spreads the ball around really well, though. I'll say that about Jordan Love.
For better or worse, for my Jaden Reed shares.
But if you're a Packers fan or if you're just a Jordan Love guy, love to see, well, not pun intended, I guess, but I enjoy seeing what he's doing over there in Green Bay. And another one, Russell Wilson, George Pickens at a 25 first for Jordan Love.
I think this is a pretty fair trade for either side, because I think George Pickens, you value him like a late first, mid first. I mean, he's had over 1,000 yards 2 years in a row now. Yeah. Once you get above 2 firsts of value for a quarterback, you got to make sure you're getting a really good quarterback. I think Jordan Love is a good quarterback, so I think this is pretty fair either way. But if you need the quarterback upgrade, yeah.
Okay. Caleb Williams right now going for 225 first.
That seems fair, especially with the upside that we continue to think that Caleb Williams can hit. He needs a new coach. He needs a new GM. We need those things. I don't know if we're going to get a new GM, but we're definitely going to get a new head coach.
Yeah, for sure. Another one here, Tyrone Tracy, Kyle Pitts, and a 25 third for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to make this trade.
Yeah, so am I. And I had Trevor Lawrence on here, but you covered him. Now, real quick, I just want to know which one of the top two quarterbacks you prefer, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward? Personally, for me, it's Cam Ward.
For me, Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders, the way he protects the ball, the way that he can pass the ball around. I've seen some people compare him to Joe Burrow because he's got good, not great arm strength, is a good pocket passer, can extend the play when needed. Shedeur Sanders has the record for completion percentage, I believe. So he's a very accurate quarterback. But at the same time, you get into the film and there's some question marks about, the scheme that they're playing, and obviously playing with a lot of really good wide receivers. There's probably 3 NFL wide receivers that were playing at Colorado, including Travis Hunter, who, possibly is the wide receiver 1 in this class. Just kind of depends on where he's actually going to play at the next level.
Yeah. And also, I think if he gets a good running game, he'll be much better. The Colorado, the Buffaloes, or what are
Buffaloes,
they?
yeah.
Oh, great.
The Buffs.
Not a good team at running the football. And also, Shedeur Sanders, for being the son of Deion Sanders, who is extremely athletic and can move very well. Shedeur Sanders, not a very good runner, surprisingly.
I've heard that, and I will say he didn't run a lot while he was at Colorado, but he ran more when he was at Jackson State.
He was very stiff sometimes.
Yeah. His final season at Jackson State in 2002, he had 173 yards. 85 carries. Now that's including sacks. I should have brought PFF. I could have actually given you his actual rushing yards. But he did have 6 rushing touchdowns that year, including a long of 42. So he can do it. He can extend the play, but he's certainly not Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, anything like that.
That's enough quarterback talk. We'll try to be brief here with some of these. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. Nate, I don't really – in the first round, I'm kind of avoiding, aside from like Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Okay. And I just want to say there's some wide receivers I'm going to be interested in the second or third rounds. I'll give you guys a couple names here. Tez Johnson, saw what he did in the Big Ten championship game against Penn State. He looks fantastic. I've been talking about Tez Johnson for 2 years, by the way. If you're on the Patreon, you would have heard all about it. Trey Harris from Ole Miss, did he declare? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe he did.
Fantastic, even better. And my man Xavier Restrepo, if you're not familiar with Xavier Restrepo, in about a month and a half, you are going to be, I want to see what Cam Ward's all about. You're going to see all about Xavier Restrepo because that was his dude. And then you get to see 9th-year player Cam McCormick catch about 9 passes for 8 touchdowns and about 17 yards on the season. Now, look, that being said, there's always going to be guys who get bumped up throughout this whole process. We know that. And especially after you see guys get overdrafted. And look, landing spot matters. Okay. I don't want to say it doesn't. but opportunity, talent matters too. I'm going to give you a prime example of why you need to stick to your guns sometimes. You ready for this one, Nate?
Let's hear it.
N'Keal Harry.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnston. There's two examples for you. Jalen Reagor. We could go on and on. Man, I'm really crapping on TCU here. But sometimes you got to stick to your guns. Draft capital is not everything. Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, and obviously Ricky Pearsall had the shot in the offseason, came back, played well towards the end of the season because he had to. Brandon Ayuk was out. Deebo Samuel a little banged up here and there, throwing hissy fits online and everything, as Deebo Samuel does. But there's some guys that we could trade for instead, Nate. I know you want to talk about this first guy here.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, I mean, he was incredible this year. Finished as the wide receiver 4 in fantasy football, which as a rookie is incredible work. I mean, Malik Neighbors did have more points per game, but missed a couple games, and that allowed Brian Thomas to finish as the top wide receiver out of this rookie class. And not just top wide receiver in this rookie class, but only behind Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and was the other Justin Jefferson?
I believe so.
I believe so as well. So Brian Thomas Jr., someone we definitely got to go after. And Mike, you put some trades on here.
I did.
And I think these are pretty good trades to go after Brian Thomas Jr. because this kind of likens to not exactly likens, but I think that there is a strategy to acquiring rookies early in the offseason.
Yeah.
Because as the offseason goes through, we have a lot more time to look back at how these players perform. We have a lot more time to start feeling worse about the veteran players who are now a year older. There's going to be movement that's going to affect those veteran players a lot more. That's going to affect some of these high productive rookies. And I remember a couple of years ago, after his rookie season, CeeDee Lamb had a pretty good rookie season, but was not to the level of Brian Thomas Jr., was not to the level of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. And the way that CeeDee Lamb rose throughout the offseason, it was a steady increase over the 6 months between the seasons, and he didn't even touch the field. He just became a higher and higher ranked player in the Dynasty community. And I acquired a lot of CeeDee Lamb in February that year. Mm. And by the time the season rolled around, he hadn't touched the field, and he already had jumped up 12, 15 spots on. I don't think Keep Trade Cut was around back then, but if it was, he would have been moving from wide receiver 15 or 20 all the way up into like the top 5. And it didn't require him playing any more games, just the community coming around and spending more time on it. And I think Brian Thomas Jr., even though he is already very highly rated, so it doesn't exactly parallel to CeeDee Lamb, but a player that you can acquire now because he's only going to get more expensive as we look back and we see Trevor Lawrence coming back healthy and things like that. I think a player that might parallel even better to CeeDee Lamb, who produced really well this year, but necessarily doesn't have the hype, is Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
And he has the hype, but I mean, I like this wide receiver class, Mike, but would I put any of these guys above Ladd McConkey after the rookie season that he just had?
No. And also for reference, CeeDee Lamb's freshman season, rookie season, 74 catches, 935 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So very respectable rookie season. Mm-hmm. Over 1,000 yards every year since, and minimum 6 touchdowns a season since his rookie year. Now this year, obviously, with that getting hurt, bit of a down year. Cooper Rush, Trey Lance playing quarterback in the last season game. But you want to hear some trades for Brian Thomas Jr.?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Marvin Mims, a 25 first, a 25 second, and a 25 third.
Absolutely. I'll give up my draft class for Brian Thomas Jr.
So will I. And 225 first.
Yeah. And even if they're like early firsts, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Another guy I want to talk about, Rashee Rice. He was only wide receiver of 100. Obviously, he missed a lot of time, but with the caveat, he averaged 16.2 fantasy points per game when he was playing. So he's on the field. He's effective. He's Mahomes' #1 wide receiver target. Maybe it's Tyreek Hill again next year. Who knows what's going to happen there? You want to hear a couple trades for him?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Jamison Williams and 226 seconds.
What a steal. Send it.
Yeah. J.J. McCarthy and a 25 second.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, this is going to depend on how you value J.J. McCarthy, and it's a little bit of a risk depending on how you feel the Vikings are going to move forward with Sam Darnold.
Right.
I suspect that they will have to let Sam Darnold move on because someone's going to offer him $50 million in free agency,
Yeah.
and they're not going to be able to stomach that. But there's also the possibility they franchise tag him. They could tag and trade. They could keep him for a year and make sure that JJ is good to go for next year. There's a lot of different options that we could move forward with Sam Darnold. So you have to take a bit of a risk on JJ McCarthy either way. So I'm totally good with making trades for Rashee Rice in this occasion, but also I don't mind trading Rashee Rice for JJ McCarthy in a second if you're a McCarthy fan.
And then where was I? Next one, a 25 first and a fourth.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, that's why you get those late round picks, because that could be the caveat. Another one, wide receiver 25 in the season. Thought he would have finished better than that. Zay Flowers.
Yeah, my boy IRL. But I will be honest, Mike, I'm not a huge Zay Flowers fan in fantasy. I actually don't have a lot of Zay Flowers in fantasy. Obviously, he performed very well. But wide receiver 25, like you said, because he was a little inconsistent throughout the year because Lamar, like Jordan Love, likes to spread the ball around.
Are there any wide receivers in this class who would take over him? Also, Evan Stewart going back to Oregon.
I did see that earlier today. Evan Stewart going back. Possibly McMillan.
Luther Burden.
I don't know how I feel about Luther Burden. I'm going to have to really dive into the film for him because he had a down year, and I need to get more into the film to see if that was just really a state of the offense or if maybe he didn't progress. Maybe he regressed. I need to get a bit more into Luther Burden before I really feel confident about him moving forward. But either way, he's still probably my wide receiver 2 or 3 in this class. So that's kind of the unknown of this wide receiver class. Right. Even at the top, there are some unknowns.
Some trades for him. I saw multiple times a straight up 25 first.
I think that's a very good trade, especially if it's like a later first. I think you're at worst, Zay Flowers is one of the best flex you can have.
For sure. And a 25 first and third.
Yeah.
So third on top there. Now here's another guy too. He's going to be a little harder to get. Malik Neighbors, we know the rookie season that he had with really bad quarterback play. I mean, they had Daniel Jones and they cut Daniel Jones. Interesting times up there at MetLife. But what does it cost to get Malik Neighbors? Not cheap, but it's worth it, I think. Chris Godwin, a 25 first and a 25 second.
I will say this seems cheap. Might need even more to get this done from Malik Neighbors right now because, as I've said, end of season rookies who've performed well, they're very, very expensive. But if you can make this deal happen, absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, all my trades sourced either Dynasty Daddy or Fantasy Calc. I don't come up with trades anymore. I only use trades that you guys do.
Yep.
So don't blame me.
We're not wrong.
Yeah, you are. Breece Hall and a 25 first.
Yeah, I think I'd be okay with this. I think this is a bit more of, depending on what you need, because I think Breece Hall is still a very good running back. Some question marks because he is going into a contract year. He's on the Jets, who, we don't have a lot of high hopes for anyway, and we have a lot of unknowns there. So if you're looking to move off the question mark that Breece Hall is, I don't think adding a first to him is too much of an overpay for Malik Neighbors, who you're getting one of the best young wide receivers that another guy coming out of LSU who's going to dominate in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Nate, let's talk about the best part of this class. Let's talk about the running backs. Nate, specifically, I want to talk just briefly about avoiding day 3 running backs if you need a starting running back. We've seen some guys. Now, here's the thing. The caveat with this is because this class is so deep, it could get convoluted on the back end there.
I might have to pivot off of my day 3 running back hate this year, Mike. I'm not sure. It's a very deep class. There's players that I have pegged for day 2 who I know are going to – I don't know the exact players, but I know of the group that I have pegged for day 2, a couple of them are going to fall into day 3. And we see that Bucky Irving this past year.
Previously, Kyren Williams a few years ago.
Kyren Williams, who, it definitely hurts them. But with how big this class is, how deep it is, I think the first couple guys drafted day 3, we're going to have to kind of consider somewhere in between, the day 3 running backs of old and whatever the day 3 running backs of this class look like.
Yeah, and Kyren Williams a free agent after this season too. Only 24 though, so might have some time out there in LA yet. But there's a lot of buzz. We got some heavy hitters in this class too, like Ashton Jenney, Omar and Hampton. Maybe Nick Singleton. I don't know if he's going to declare or not. Depends on what he does in the next game here, or if they move on. Caleb Johnson, Devin Neal, Quinshon Judkins. There's a lot of good running
Trey
backs.
Henderson.
Travion Henderson. That is true. So I think with all the buzz, things could get a little mixed up. There's going to be guys going to less than desirable landing spots too. We see guys that we think should be a starter. They end up being a backup. We don't know. So maybe you're better off trading for a younger vet that's already established. Nate, I have 3 examples here. Okay.
All right.
They're Chase Brown, who was running back 10 this season. Bucky Irving was running back 13, which is impressive considering he was not a starting running back the entire season. Chuba Hubbard, running back 15. Now, I know you said, Mike, what about Jonathan Brooks? Brooks retore an ACL.
Probably not going to see a lot of Brooks in 2025.
Yeah.
Probably more of a 2026 play at this point.
Right. But even so, moving forward, Chuba Hubbard got a 3-year contract extension. He's not going anywhere. So, Nate, let's talk about Chase Brown real quick. What would it cost to get him a 25 first and a 26 first? Not cheap. But this is the 10.
Way too expensive for me.
Too expensive for you?
Yeah, too expensive for me. I have Chase Brown valued around mid to late first right now.
Okay.
He was very productive, as you said, a top 12 running back. But I think I mentioned it maybe a week or two ago on the podcast, but Cincinnati Bengals running backs were really bad around the goal line, including Chase Brown. So they're going to be bringing in somebody to compete for those touches. They're going to have to bring in some kind of short yardage back to compete for those touches. Going to take away some of those touches away from Chase Brown, some touches overall from Chase Brown. I still think he'll be productive, but I think Chase Brown might kind of fall into more of a high-end RB2, mid RB2 than the RB1 that we saw this year, especially with the incoming talent of the running back class that's coming in this year.
Okay, fair enough. Did has 7 rushing touchdowns regardless and 1 receiving touchdown. Also had 54 receptions.
Yeah,
but only
a lot in the passing game.
Only averaged 6.7 yards per reception, though. So hopefully that improves a little bit. Another one for him, I think you'll like this one better. A 25 first for Chase Brown and Jaylen Warren, who, for all we know, there's a possibility he's a big contributor next year for the Steelers.
I believe that Jaylen Warren is a free agent, just like Najee Harris is.
True, but I believe he's probably cheaper to re-sign than Najee Harris would be.
Probably. I do like this trade. Like I said, I think like a mid to late first for Chase Brown is pretty good. Though someone in my DMs from our Patreon community asked me about Chase Brown. Someone was trying to, get him to trade like the 104, I think, for Chase Brown. And I told him not to do that. And I also said, hey, the Bengals aren't in the playoffs. There's not a lot going for Chase Brown in the next couple months. And there's the draft. Like I said, there might be adding competition. If you want Chase Brown, I think the time to buy Chase Brown is in the summertime, not now. I think it'll be a better value at that point. Because I think even after they draft somebody, Chase Brown's still going to be very productive. Like I said, a high-end RB2. And I think he'll be cheaper then, where you will be able to acquire him for, the 111, 110, 112, or even an early second, depending on what kind of competition gets out to that backfield.
Yeah. Last one here. Oh, that was last one. I'm sorry. So let's talk about Bucky Irving now. How about a 25 first for AD Mitchell and Bucky Irving?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to make that trade. I think Bucky Irving but just by himself is more than worth just a first.
Yeah, and 1,100 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns, 47 receptions for 392 yards. No receiving touchdowns, but still 47 receptions. This is a guy who didn't start every game.
He'll come.
Really, really impressive. I'm good with that trade as well. And a 25 first and a third.
Yep.
Yeah, fine with that as well. The third.
Also, Mike, I will say something I'm looking forward to. I saw on Dynasty Daddy on trades that have happened in the past couple of days. We are starting to get the actual draft positions, the actual draft slots of these first round picks. So hopefully in the next podcast or two, we'll get to the point where these trades will include the actual draft slot and make our trade values that much better.
That's exciting. Last guy here, Chuba Hubbard for a 25 and 26 second. 2 second-round picks for Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, especially with them being different years. I think he's going to be productive moving forward, especially with how that Carolina Panthers offense looked at the end of the season, how Bryce Young looked at the end of the season. I'm hesitant to be super excited, but I have a lot of Bryce Young. So if he does continue to look like that, it will make my 2025 season much better than it already looks.
For sure. And here's another one, Jaylen Warren in a 25 first.
I think this might be a little expensive for Chuba Hubbard. I would wonder what you can get else for this same price, especially with, like I said, like the running back talent coming in. Where is this first located with Jaylen Warren? You might be able to get a player of similar production to Chuba Hubbard or slightly less, and you get Jaylen Warren. You get a little bit of an age boost as well. You get a younger player. So this one seems close to fair. But that first round pick really does need to be like the 111, 112 for me.
All right, fair enough. But Nate, overall, this is going to be an exciting running back class. I'm really, really ready for this one. I can't remember the last time I saw a running back class this good. Maybe when Jahmyr Gibbs came out, that class was really good too.
The Jonathan Taylor draft class was really good.
Yeah. But then, hey, look, there was a lot of guys last year that I was excited about that just got terrible landing spots. Kind of didn't hear about him again.
Yeah. Like my guy Marshawn Lloyd. It wasn't necessarily a terrible landing spot. Just ended up hurt. And then Josh Jacobs had a great season.
Yeah. I still think there's still hope for Marshawn Lloyd.
I think so too.
Maybe a good buy low in the offseason.
Might be.
Possibly buy injured players. I like to do that. Nate, let's close it out. Let's talk about the best position in fantasy football, and certainly my favorite. Why don't you lead the charge on the tight end position? Because we're getting long on time here, but that's okay. For just a programming note, if you will, for most of the offseason, we're probably going to be doing just one pod a week, maybe two sometimes if we have a lot to talk about, but there'll be a little bit of a longer format for you. Welcome. So lead it off, because I'll talk for 45 minutes about tight ends.
I bet you will, especially because one of the first questions I have here to pose is, who is the tight end one in this draft class? Is it Tyler Warren, who won the award for being the best tight end in college football this year? Or is it Colston Loveland, who arguably was the tight end one coming into the season, but Michigan as a whole, as their offense, really, really struggled to pass the ball at all. And despite him being their best weapon at Michigan in the passing game, did not put up the stats that a lot of us hoped he would, did not put up the stats that he did the year prior with J.J. McCarthy. But Colston Loveland, very, very athletic, that pass-catching tight end that we have known to really love in the modern NFL. Tyler Warren, a great pass catcher himself, obviously very, very productive. But what Tyler Warren brings to the table is a ton of versatility. He's a great blocker, great down the field. He can be in the backfield. He can move around the formation. He can do the dirty work for you. I believe even once this year he snapped the ball and then later called a touchdown. So Tyler Warren really has that full versatility skill set. And with the production that he had, likely the tight end went off the board. But once we get to testing and things like that, though, I think Tyler Warren will do quite fine on testing, as all Penn State players seem to do. Colston Loveland, I think, will make some noise in some of the community for that tight end one spot. But Mike, I'm pretty sure I know who your tight end one is.
Well, I always go with the better player, so it's Tyler Warren. Honestly, this is funny. Tyler Warren this past season, 1,158 yards. So he has almost as many yards in this last year that Colston Loveland has in his career. Colston Loveland, 1,466 yards for his career and 11 career touchdowns. Tyler Warren had 8 this past year. So Tyler Warren, extremely versatile. I'm not saying he's the next Brock Bowers, but he will be the closest thing you have to it in this class. Look, a lot of people are going to talk about Harold Fannin Jr.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of dissension about him just because of him playing at Bowling Green, never transferred up, blah, blah, blah. And there's going to be some other guys too. If you want a good late round dark throw, if he comes out this year, there's a guy named Lake McCree from USC. I remember scouting some USC players last year. I liked what I saw from him. He is not declared yet, but he can declare. So, and also I have to mention Ben Urasek. Don't judge him by what happened this past year. Georgia, look at the film. This dude can do everything, but please proceed.
Yeah. There's also Mason Taylor out of LSU, who was a very good tight end over his college career. Harold Fannin Jr., of course. And also Gunnar Helm out of Texas. Someone else we'll probably be talking about. Rondé Gadsden out of Syracuse. a big, long receiver who plays that tight end spot, kind of that in between, but still 6'5". So he's got the body profile for it, just a little bit leaner than some of our prototypical NFL tight ends. So there is some depth to this class, Mike. And that brings me to my next question I have is, with the depth of this class, there's going to be guys that we're happy to pick up in the second round and the third round because we see the upside of the tight end position.
Right.
But when spending a second round pick on a tight end, is it worth spending it on one of the guys we mentioned? Or are you better off spending that late second round pick on a guy like Ja'Tavion Sanders or Ben Sinnott, who we were really excited about this past offseason, but didn't really get the opportunity to, in Ben Sinnott's case, he was behind Zach Ertz. And we know from history that usually the guy behind Zach Ertz ends up being pretty good. Ja'Tavion Sanders started to show some flashes and then unfortunately had that neck injury that cut his season short. So both of those guys seem like, what we're expecting these next guys to be, but just a year quicker. And we know at the tight end position, it often takes a little bit longer for these guys to really develop into fantasy producers unless they're Brock Bowers or Dalton Kincaid, who had a pretty good rookie season last year. So, Mike, what's your thoughts on this? Would you rather draft a guy or spend that pick on one of the guys I mentioned or someone similar?
Of those two that you mentioned, just for example's sake, I'd probably go with Ja'Tavion Sanders. They get hurt one point throughout the year, but we know he's going to be the guy there in Carolina. And I think you can get Ben Sinnott cheaper than, we'll just say a second. I see a couple here, a third and a fourth. There is one second round trade. This is on Fantasy Calc. I mean, then there's a couple where it looks like he's kind of a throw-in and a bigger deal, stuff like that. Like here's one like T. Higgins for J.J. McCarthy and Ben Sinnott. I don't know why someone's making that trade. I'll keep T. Higgins there. Ben Sinnott for Johnny Smith. Kind of interesting there. But yeah, JT Sanders, I like him a lot. I'm pretty hopeful for him, to be honest with you. But hey, who knows? Maybe the Commanders re-sign Zach Ertz. It's a possibility. He's playing really well.
Sure is. He's continuing to play well. I believe he had like 2 touchdowns championship weekend. So
he did. Yeah, thank you, Zach Ertz, for that. And bringing me in some money.
Yeah, so I think, Mike, in summary, this is a very intriguing class so far because I don't have a great feel for any position other than the running back position. I think the tight ends, like we said, we're excited about Tyler Warren. We're excited about Colston Loveland and some of the depth of the tight end position. But at the quarterback position, at the wide receiver position, there's question marks at the top. There's question marks throughout the depth. At the running back position, we are very, very excited. And I was really excited about this year because we were excited about last year's running back class, and then a lot of them went back to college. And now they're all coming out this year together. So, like we said, we're going to have to really look at that day 3 running back profile for the 2025 class and maybe pivot from how we've approached those guys before. But luckily, you can stick around here and you can hear us in real time as we figure it out. We speculate. We look at these guys. We get into the film. And we're going to come up with some ideas on how we can help you win your rookie draft. We're going to be doing mock drafts all the time. If you're in the Patreon and one sleeper releases those rookies, we're doing mock drafts every single night. That way, the strategy that you need to have when you go into your rookie draft so you're not surprised, because that's a video that we'll do this offseason is mistakes that you can make in your rookie draft. And one of those is not preparing with mock drafts. So make sure you stick around with us because we're going to make sure that you're prepared to do the best that you can in your rookie draft.
So that's just some early off-season prep for you guys. Just kind of wanted to get some names out there for you, let you know, hey, we all love rookies, and I understand that everybody wants to build around youth, but there is no problem with having veteran players on your roster because a lot of times vets equals points. You're not every rookie is going to hit. Some of them are going to miss, unfortunately. But really hope that you guys enjoyed what we brought to you. Like I said, like Nate said, check out our Patreon. And you know what? There's only one way to get ready, truly ready for draft day. Click on the link below and buy yourself some merch. Rock it at your fantasy draft. That's what that's what I want to see. If you're doing an in-person draft,
show up.
You rock the Rewind shirt, get a picture, tag us on X or Instagram. We'll share it. That would be awesome. Until next time, everybody. For Nate, I'm Mike. Let's bring it back for the new year. Be kind. Please rewind. Thank you for listening.